Join us on this multi-dimensional journey as we uncover the timeless connection between medicine, magic, spirituality, and the mysteries of the universe. I'm Olive.
And I'm Raven.
And
this is the Double Rainbow Podcast. Welcome back, everybody. It is the new year, and we are kicking it off with an episode about Grabovoi codes, also known as miracle codes, and their controversial history. So what are Grabovoi codes? Where have you seen them? Where did they come from? Olive, you got to help us out.
So where you've probably seen them is either Facebook or TikTok. I really haven't seen them on Instagram, to be honest. I'm sure they are out there. But they are strings of like 7 to 9 digits. And sometimes it'll just be a picture. Oftentimes it's a video, and there will be like a tonal music playing in the background, sometimes affirmations, or sometimes there will be videos talking about like use these manifestation cheat codes to change your life. So that's probably where you have seen them. They aren't usually even called Grabovoi numbers. When I've seen them personally, you probably have either seen like miracle codes or manifestation cheat codes is a lot more common. So what they are is they are these sequences created by Grigory Grabovoi, and I want to call him Grabovoi. I don't know why. He's from Kazakhstan. He's not French. I don't know why I do that. And they are said to use radionic signatures for healing and manifestation. And so I couldn't find an exact definition of radionic signatures, but radionics is basically defined as a method of detecting and balancing information in our energetic blueprint, also called our biofield, also called intrinsic data field, and that these codes can be used, or this kind of healing can be done at a distance. And so it said that we know that all living beings have like an electromagnetic field. And then there's the belief that when this field is distorted, this is what will result in disease, sicknesses, ailments, other kind of issues. So, these remedies or these codes, they have their own special frequency or vibration to help make that frequency, I guess, like more whole. And so every person and place or thing on the planet shares the same electromagnetic field, but then also has its like unique signature. And so in the same way, each of these codes is going to have their own unique signature with them to do something different.
Okay. You can find lists of these things too, by the way. Just Google it and there will be like hundreds, if not thousands. So
yes. So some examples, I found these off of a popular website, which I'll link, are one for Bring My Crush Back to Me. Always my favorite. That's people's favorite. Unexpected money, romantic love, fame, good health. One of my personal favorites is healing coronavirus. That one really gets me. And then how do you use them? How it's suggested to use them is by either memorizing them, repeating them out loud or in your head, just saying them casually throughout the day. And then it's suggested to like feel love, gratitude, peace, and joy when saying them while smiling, and then saying them with the intent of good for all. I'm not gonna lie, that one kind of confuses me because most of these don't have to do with the intent of good for all. I don't really know how bringing the crush back to me is good for the crush. But that's just to give you an example, like what they are and what they're used for. And so where did they come from? So they came from Grigory Grabovoi. He wrote this book in 1999 called Restoring the Human Body by Focusing on Numbers. And you can now still buy this book on Amazon, and it's called Restoration of the Human Organism Through Concentration on Numbers. Slight little switch there. Anyways, so we just want to bring up real quick the concept of radionics. So, Raven, does that make sense to you? Do you have any questions about that?
I had so many questions, and we have been going back and forth talking about this because the Grabovoi codes do work. Like, I have used them and they have worked for me. But when we started to talk about where they originated from, he essentially made his own radionic machine. Okay. And this machine just like popped out the numbers of what the vibrations were. And then we got to talking about, like, if he made the technology, if he made the machine, like, where is the information originating? Like, is he the one that is programming it? Like, how is it collecting its data?
Right.
What frequency is he using? Like,
What
how
frequency?
does the machine work? We could not find information on any of this. And that was honestly what was disturbing to us, because they do work, and numerology is very similar, and other things that we'll talk about, where the concept of it makes sense of using specific vibrations of numbers. But how did he get the sequences? What are the sequences?
Right.
You know?
Because it's not the same. It's not based off of like traditional numerology. And that's also what I was confused about. And just a quick disclaimer, we haven't read the book. So if this information is in the book, I'm sorry. If we aren't like accurately reflecting that, but it is like $30 to access that information. There's a slight paywall. Anyways, what confused me is like radionics is talking about energy in the electromagnetic spectrum. Well, the electromagnetic spectrum includes UV light, it includes microwaves, it includes radio waves, you know, and there's no indication of like what frequency these numbers are representing. There's no indication of what frequency they're representing. So like, is this a microwave? Is this number going to cook my food?
Right.
Or is like, what frequency is this, and how is the frequency being reflected in the number? That is not represented anywhere. So there's no clear kind of explanation of how these numbers were created from radionics. It just says that they were. So just keep that in mind if you do choose to use these, and maybe try looking into it a little bit more for yourself.
That just got me thinking as well too of it's quite vulnerable to manipulation in the forms of, if we don't know the origins of this, right? So all we have is his book and he's listing 100. Well, people have made a lot more Grabovoi codes since then. People have been adding to them. So how do you know that these
Right.
people are adding to them, like that they don't have different intentions, or that they're just creating it out of their own? Like, where, if we don't have the origins to create the Grabovoi codes on our own, how do we actually know the intent? How do we actually know that the vibration carries what he's saying it carries? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, it's just food for thought. I have used these and they have worked, but I would much rather use something that can originate from myself, whereas like numerology and sacred geometry always comes back and has an origin that you can trace.
Or you know where it comes from, right? Because I'm still confused on what this machine even did. Because I mean, like, what? How do you condense like real love and get the frequency from this little machine? That's just my question. Whereas like other things make sense, where because I do use like tonal songs and stuff for meditation, and it's like, well, that frequency does stimulate like an emotional state, so that makes sense. But like, this is more saying the machine extracted that frequency into a number. Well, where did that frequency come from, and how did it turn into the number? That's my question. We're just throwing that out there.
It has not been verified. So people
No.
have not taken a scientific approach to verify these, peer review it. It basically was just, he released it as his own tool, and people really were attracted to it.
Yes.
Like a lot of spiritual tools, if it
Manifestation tools specifically.
if it works, then I'm not going to question it. You know what I mean? And that's why we're here, is we really want to question it and talk to you about this, because there is sort of this darker side to Grigory Grabovoi and his whole life.
Let's get into that. I think we should go into that, actually. So, you know, because it's also important to consider when you are using a tool, you do want to know the origin of where it came from. Because a lot of the time, the tool that we're using is going to have that energetic connection to its creator. And so it's very important to know who is the creator, what was their intention behind it, and what are they like. So Raven did some we both did some interesting research. I'll just give you a little background before she goes into the really interesting stuff. So like I said earlier, Grigory Grabovoi is actually from Kazakhstan. He was born the 14th of November in 1963, so he is a Scorpio sun sign, I believe, if you care about that at all. So, and according to his website, so I like to hear how people project themselves. So according to his website, he is a doctor of physical and mathematical scientists, an academician. I don't know if that's a mistranslation or if I can't read. The author of the discovery of creating field of information and original works on the forecasting of future events, their control, correction. He is the author of the teachings about salvation and harmonious development. If you didn't understand that, that's okay. I took it directly from his website and I didn't really understand what that meant either. It was very confusing to me. So I went to the Grabovoi Foundation website, which is also called Global Salvation, where he says that he's the author of hundreds of scientific, educational, and spiritual works recorded at the Office of Copyright of United States Congress Library. I would love to see that. Relating to the structuring of consciousness and spiritual development, prevention of disasters, that sounds cool, bioinformation healing, and the total recovery of the human organism and any living matter. Okay, just that, what he means with that is resurrecting the dead. So we'll get into that in a second. So how did he get into this field, or what kind of got him going into the more spiritual world? Well, he says that he met the Bulgarian mystic Baba Vanga, who you should look up if you haven't heard of her. She was very, very famous. He said that he met her and she told him that he needed to share his arts and gifts with the world, which is why he shared these numbers. Anyways, other sources around Baba Vanga say that she actually did meet him, but thought that he was actually full of shit and asked him to leave the meeting. Important to put all sides of the story out there. So that's just a little background of how he got into what he does, what he says he does. Still a little bit mystical, but Raven, what did you find?
This is where it starts to get controversial, because he actually was pretty well respected in his fields. He was quite educated. He did make a lot of research papers and things like that. But what happened was, in 2008, there was a lot of children that died in a school shooting, and he went to the parents and told them that he could resurrect them from the dead if they paid him a fee. These parents did pay him.
And it was a lot of kids, wasn't it?
It was a ton of kids.
It was a lot of kids died. It was really sad.
Yeah, it's really sort of predatory what he did. And the parents paid. They never got their money back. They never got their children resurrected. He ended up getting prosecuted, and he did go to jail. But while this was happening, he was essentially, there was a newspaper that was coming after him called the Izvestia, and they were kind of uncovering things, and he bribed them $25,000 to shut their pie holes. And this came to light that he was bribing them. Obviously, I was telling Olivia this too, in Russia, this really isn't that bad. It is quite common. But us in the United States, it's what are you doing?
Even though it's happening all the time, we just don't
all
know about it.
Exactly. So that was kind of a big one. He ended up getting convicted on 11 counts of large-scale fraud, sentenced to 11 years imprisonment. What's crazy is his sentence was reduced then to 8 years, and only a fine of 750,000 rubles. And then even after that, they went back and decided that they were going to pay him because of how long the trial took. So in the end, he sort of reclaimed his name and all of those things back, even after all of this.
And just really think about how unethical that is, and how taking advantage of people who are grieving their children, what it would take to do something like that. Yeah, I was just really shocked, honestly, when I read this, and people paid him because they were grieving. They were very sad,
You would pay anything.
You'd pay anything.
There's a possibility, if someone's promising you a miracle.
Yeah.
Do it. So I think that that's something to think about with these miracle codes, where he's saying that he can he said that he could bring the children back with the codes as well. That's needs to be added in there as well. Not just him as a practitioner, whatever it is that he does, but he was saying he had a specific code that would resurrect these children, and nothing came of it. And he really didn't get punished in any way, shape, or form that he should have. And so we want to give you guys like maybe some other ways of manifesting if you
Other
don't
tools.
align. Yeah, if you don't align with this. And a lot of people like they go, oh well, isn't Grabovoi codes just like angel numbers? Like, isn't that the same thing? And they loop them together. So what do you think about that, Olive?
They're fundamentally really different because when you're using a miracle code or manifestation code, what you're doing is you're trying to like pull in that energy. You're using that frequency as like a seed frequency to like align other frequencies to you, right? The ones that you want. Whereas an angel number is more like a mode of communication, right? Like we see an angel number and we know that that's a spirit communicating with us. So it's kind of like the opposite energy exchange. Like one is us trying to pull stuff in, the other one is us kind of like waking up or being aware to signs. So they really aren't the same thing at all. Some people do try to use angel numbers for manifestation, but Raven, you had an interesting insight on that earlier. What do you suggest like telling people about that when they try to use angel number? And by the way, angel number, when we're talking about that, really common ones are like 111, 333, 555, usually like those repeating numbers. Also like Raven, you've said before, they can be palindromes. So things that are the same forwards as they are backwards. 101, things like that repeat the same way. So yeah, Raven, can you explain a little bit about angel numbers and manifestation? Like what's the relationship there? Because it's really different than how you use Grabovoi codes.
Exactly. So if when people are using angel numbers as manifestation codes, like if they're using them in a spell or just like as a mantra, what you're actually doing is sending a message back out to your guides and your angels. So it is not like manifestation where you're pulling or aligning with the vibration. You're trying to become that vibration. You are actually just sending out a spiritual message, just like they're sending one to you.
Yeah.
That is mostly affirming, because that is what angel numbers are. They're an affirmation of like, we see you, we know what you're doing, we know what's happening, we're here for you, we're helping. The other is me sending it out of, hey, I know this is going on in my life, thanks for your support. It's very much a communication number, and it is used for that. And versus there are other forms of numbers that you can use for manifestation, such as like ones with astrological correspondences or numerology in general. So definitely angel numbers should be thought of as more of a mode of communication, less of manifestation. It's very different in the purpose.
Totally. So are there other like ways numbers could be used for manifestation? Any other kinds of like modalities or things like that are popular?
I always recommend, I am an astrologist for a profession, that you use your moon signs numbers. So all of your Pisces, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I am too, which is funny. So that would be number 12 in numerology. It rules the 12th house. So 12 can be combined, just like numerology always brings it down to a single digit, with threes. And so you can use 3 or 9, because 3 times 3 is 9. So you can use those as your manifestation. You might notice that your lucky number just so happens to be your moon signs numerology number.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. You can also use numerology in witchcraft. So this is very common in spell work. If you are, especially in like hoodoo, they use 7s a lot and 9s and things like that, where you're doing 6 drops of an oil, or you're using 7 candles, or you're using 3 of each crystal. Like it's very much an intentional and specific use of numbers for their vibration in order to bring things in, where 4 is protection and stability, 3 is harmony, collaboration, and that kind of shows through in tarot, not very much, but it is similar in that you're using those layers of vibration to call in what you want or to use it for your spell work. So.
Yeah, I personally use that when I create a lot of like herbal products, teas and oils and things like that. And I do use numerology for basically like the amount of something that I'm gonna put into it. I will, and then also for obviously I'll just like stir it around and stuff like that. But when I'm really infusing the intention, like when it comes to that part of the creative process, with the ingredients, I do use a specific number of rotations and like a specific direction depending on what I'm doing. So there's a lot of ways that you can incorporate numerology into your practice and get creative with it.
Definitely. I think that it's one of the most like underrated uses, and sometimes we even do it subconsciously where you're just using your lucky number over and over again. But you can use that in terms of writing your affirmation that many times, using that amount of something, like just the limits are infinite. You can use it in every
Dancing.
Yes, seriously, like the amount of movements, the amount of claps, the amount of times that you wipe your face, like when you're cleaning your house. There's so many ways to use it that are really originating from you and originating from your connection to that number.
Yes.
That it is immensely more powerful than if you use something like a Grabovoi code where you don't know the origin of the number and you're just kind of writing it like hoping and praying that it like works.
Yeah.
So that's why we really want you guys to kind of look into these alternative manifestation uses that you can do.
Numbers can be fun. So Raven, you also math is cool, kids. You also have a little bit of like knowledge and work with divine healing codes. So can we also talk about like how that's different?
Yeah.
How divine healing codes are different than these miracle codes?
Yeah, divine healing codes are very close. They're sort of a cousin to Grabovoi codes. The only real difference is divine healing codes are used for healing the physical body. Grabovoi codes are used for everything. And it is often and really only used in quantum healing. So quantum healing is where you're doing the healing at a quantum level and it's not happening in the physical realm. It is very faith-based. It is very non-tangible. You can't touch it, you can't feel it. So a way to do that is they have the same code format, and what you would do is you would write it on the like part of your body you're trying to heal, or a lot of people nowadays, like they'll put it on an iPad and then they'll scan the iPad with the number like over their body. It's also used in conjunction with Reiki. I know, I'm dying.
Wait, that one took me a second to process. I haven't heard of that one.
Digital, like you just
like a digital, and then
and it's usually used in conjunction with Reiki, which Reiki is like a whole different.
It's a whole other process,
yeah. So it's like really, how do you separate the two's results? Because Reiki has like scientific.
Great scientific, yeah.
So I always feel like that one's really interesting. And then you are really more of the like psychologist, more of that kind of area. So have you ever heard of switch words? Have you used them?
Yeah. So I have actually way more in a traditional psychological way than a spiritually based way is how I first heard of them. So switch words are basically words that you switch out, and these words are supposed to also switch your energy. So they alter your energy from one field to the next. So Raven, what was the ones you said you liked? You said you use Golden Gateway. Is that one that you use?
So I use like very spiritual ones. And this is really like personal. It's up to you. I use Bliss Charged Love when I'm talking about.
I love that.
When I'm talking about unconditional love, because we can't like define that vibration, I use the word bliss charged love when I'm really trying to call in that frequency that is so high, that is from the source that I can't possibly describe it.
Define it.
I will use bliss charged love. And then Golden Gateway for me is like opening up to it. And so I use these as specific trigger words in spiritual things that I've read. It can awaken or trigger parts of your DNA to start spinning. And when they start spinning, they start reconnecting, and then you start remembering. And so it's controversial in its own right.
It changes your connection to your subconscious, right? So for another example, like let's say you're really critical of yourself and you're really hard on yourself, and you always tell yourself like, I'm fucking up, I'm fucking up really bad. And so then you're like, I'm gonna do a switch word here, I'm gonna switch this out, I'm gonna make an affirmation to bring more like gentleness and love to myself. So you switch out the word fucking with learning. So okay, I'm learning, not I'm fucking up, like I'm learning right now. Or one that I really liked honestly, and this was way more coming from a psychological perspective, is switching. You can't always do this, it's going to depend on the context, but switching the word but for and, because a lot of the times when we use the word but, what we're saying is everything that came before the but is just invalid. That's bullshit. You know what I mean? And so that's how I actually was introduced to switch words, was more about like being more mindful of the words that I'm putting out into the world and the speech that I'm using with others, and using and in my subconscious, because it also trains my subconscious. Because when you use and more than but, you're also reducing the amount of dichotomies that you're expressing.
Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah. So that's like one way, but then these can also be considered a lot more like affirmations. You know what I mean? Like how Raven was using it, like with bliss charged love. So they can actually be used for manifestation, right? Because if you change your subconscious, if you can make those changes, then you can change the world around you, or so they say. So lots of ways to manifest. I hope that gave you some ideas. And also, you know what I actually just remembered that we didn't bring up? Do you remember what Grigory said? Just in case you were still on the fence of like, I don't know how I feel about this guy. He also, okay, I'm not gonna lie, he said that he was the second coming of Jesus. He did do that one.
They always pull that one. So it's always like, ding, in case you didn't need a red flag, I got one right. So this is food for thought. That's it. We were having a conversation. We were like, oh shit, we should talk about this because it's wild.
It really is. And I hope that got you thinking about like when you interact with different spiritual tools, maybe doing some research on where they came from, and then deciding for yourself how you feel about it. Like I was telling Raven, if you decide to use these, that's fine. To me, it's the equivalent of continuing to listen to a Michael Jackson song. Like, like we know what we know now. Is the music bad? That's up to you to decide. That's up to you to decide. So thank you so much for tuning in today. If you would like to support us and keep this going, then please reach out, connect with us, smash the subscribe on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. And you can also connect with us and our personal businesses. So Raven is on Instagram and TikTok as the Midtown Mystic. And I'm Olive, and I am on both of those things as hi_little_flower. So happy New Year.
Thank you so much. Yes, welcome 2020.
I'm Olive.
And I'm Raven.
And this is the
Double Rainbow Podcast.